Hello. This is the second time I've tried to make this video. I made the whole thing and then discovered that I'd forgotten to plug the microphone in. That was bright, wasn't it? Right, I want to talk about the statue of Medusa with the head of Perseus, which is in the Collect Pond Park in Lower Manhattan. And so this is the history, as according to Wikipedia. Medusa with the head of Perseus is a sculpture created by Luciano Garbazzi in 2008. The statue depicts Medusa holding a sword and the head of Perseus, a role reversal of Greek legend. A bronze cast version is temporarily displayed in Collect Pond Park, Lower Manhattan, and apparently, according to Wikipedia, this is facing the New York County Criminal Court building, which has caused some feminists. Apparently, this has become a MeToo icon, which just shows, I'm sorry, the poverty of American education. I'm terribly sorry, but if you think that's a Me Too image, then you really don't know anything about Greek myths. Okay, but we'll get to that in a minute. It's facing the criminal court building, and so some women think that because of that, it's, you know, when men go into the court, they're going to look at that statue and they're going to think, women are going to get their revenge on me beating up my wife or something like that. Now, I am not minimizing the crime of beating up the wife, but quite frankly, most men who indulge in that sort of thing would not understand that statue anyway. Okay, so let's see, what do I have in my notes here? It's an awful statue. It's just a terrible statue. If it depicts any sort of punishment, it's the punishment of having to look at such a terrible piece of art. Where do I start? Well, first of all, it's didactic. You know, it reminds me of the sort of art you got in the Soviet Union. You know, it gives a message. This Luciano fellow said he was giving a message, a role reversal on what Perseus did to Medusa. We've got her doing it to him. The whole point is that one glance from Medusa turns you to stone. So let's look at the logic of this. If she looks at, she doesn't have to cut his head off. She just has to look at him. He turns to stone. Then how does she cut his head off? And she's got to look at him to cut his head off in the first place. Well, he's got to look at her, frankly, but I don't see how it's possible for her to cut his head off without him seeing her. He's not wearing a blindfold here. Okay, so the logic is that he's already been turned into a statue and she's cut his head off. What? And by the way, let's look at something else. That sword she's carrying. That's a Saracen sword, sort of maybe the 12th century. Arab sword. It's not a Bronze Age sword, which the Medusa would have been carrying. So he didn't even get the chronology right. Okay, what else do I have here? So look, it's didactic. It doesn't make any sense. A Medusa wouldn't need to take the head off of anybody. She'd just turn him into a statue. And she's carrying a sword from totally the wrong timeline. All right, now, there's the other thing. I mean, the execution is awful. Let's just look. I mean, that's snakes on her head. They're like a bad rope wig. The snakes, they're supposed to be frightening. You know, they're supposed to be all over the place like my hair usually is. And yet just look at that. It's like a sort of bathing cap, really. And then there's this other problem. It looks to me like a 3D print, that statue. There's always a bit of a problem. with women in statues. If you look at classical pictures, classical statues, you'll see that the artist shows his skill by showing muscle. In fact, I'll find a Perseus statue and I'll put it up here, and you'll see the muscles, the ribs, the flow of the body. It's easier with usually it's a reasonably slim, athletic young man. That's how they usually depict these things. And it's, and then you get the muscles, you get this sense of movement. It's more difficult with women, for sure, because the muscles don't show up as much. But even so, there's no definition in those legs. She's supposed to be reasonably athletic, but you don't see that in her legs. They're very bland and smooth. In more classical art, they would use drapery to help show off their skill with instead of muscle. But I mean, he could have showed off more skill with those snakes, couldn't he? And he didn't. All right. Oh, and they also say she has a resolute face. Well, it doesn't look resolute to me. It looks blank. She's just killed somebody. There's no passion there. There's no triumph. There's nothing. It's completely dead. Okay, so that's the way I feel about the statue. Like, what else do I have here? But yeah, okay. The worst crime is that the artist and the people who are making much of this statue have completely missed the point of the Perseus and Medusa story. Now, just a minute. Hang on, I'm going to look up something. Yeah, that's it. So I thought so. All right. Yeah. Let's start with who Medusa was. She was the daughter of a couple of either gods or demigods. She herself was mortal. Her two sisters were immortal. But she was a priestess of Athena, and she was so beautiful she attracted the attention of the sea god Poseidon, and then she had a fling with him in Athena's temple. And when Athena discovered that, she was not best pleased. And to punish Medusa, she gave her the curse of turning everything that looked at her into stone. Any living creature that looked at her turned to stone. So, of course, it was next to impossible to kill her. But this terrible curse meant that she couldn't associate with any human beings anymore. I mean, she had two sisters and they apparently weren't affected by it. So maybe that had something to do with them being immortals, but she couldn't associate in society anymore with anyone without turning them to stone. This was a terrible curse. Now, in some legends, she becomes hideously ugly, and in others, she is still incredibly beautiful, so beautiful that she just turns anyone who looks at her into stone. And what happens is that Perseus is given an impossible task, and the impossible task he takes up is to bring, this king says, do this impossible task. And Perseus goes after the head of the Medusa, which of course would have killed him, except he got help from Athena. So you see, the goddess who had laid this curse on Medusa then gave Perseus the means to end the curse. She gave him a shield which was so highly polished it could be used as a mirror. And Perseus held the shield up, looked at Medusa's face in the mirror, of the shield and then cut her head off. He put the head in a bag. Now, oh, by the way, he took it back to the king and showed him, you wanted a present? Here you are. That was the end of the king. When she died, 2 creatures sprang out of the blood that fell on the ground. One of them was called a set of creatures which were called the Amphisbaena, and they were always depicted as like 2-headed snake, a snake with a head at 2 ends, and may have been inspired by a sort of snake common in the Libyan desert. These were anteaters. They ate ants in the desert. So they were very base animals. And you might say that this is the base nature of the Medusa. The other creature that sprang out of the blood that was spilt was Pegasus, the winged horse, a symbol of purity and freedom and flight and imagination, everything that was the spiritual best of the Medusa. So when Perseus killed her, the baseness of her character, the part of her character that induced her to screw a god on the altar of the goddess that she served, that went into the Libyan desert as a snake, and the higher part of her character, the spiritual part of her, flew off into the air. With this statue, what this Luciano chap has done is he's left her the cursed creature that she was before. She cannot escape what she is. Someone who can't associate with the rest of society, because she turns the rest of society into stone as soon as it lays eyes on her. This is just a complete, it's not an inversion of MeToo. It's an inversion of what you can become. It's everything that's wrong with modern society. It's a total lack of understanding of what these myths meant. And just to finish up, you see, what on earth is his name? I've already forgotten. He's so unmemorable. Just a minute. Medusa with the head. Oh, there it is. I'm going back to the Wikipedia thing. Garbati. Okay, Luciano Garbati. If he wanted to choose a strong woman, why didn't he take one of the others? There are 2 from the Bible that I can think of right now. There's Judith and Holofernes, and Jael and Sisera. And in both of those, you have women who murder strong men. Look, Holofernes was an Assyrian general, happened to drop in on Judith's tent. She gave him wine, got him drunk, and then cut his head off. And here's a picture of it, which was painted by a 17th century artist called Artemisia Gentileschi, and she, as a matter of fact, painted this as a revenge picture because she had been raped by a colleague of her father's, and this was her way of getting revenge. If you want to make a statue, you do something like that. Of course, that's too complicated for you, isn't it, Mr. Garbati or Signor Garbati? And then there's the other one, Jael and Sisera. Sisera was a Canaanite general, and he took refuge in Jael's house. And what did you? Oh yeah, it was her tent. And what she did was she when he went to sleep, banged a tent peg through his temple. And again, this is, if you want Me Too, then why not these guys? Why take this poor cursed Gorgon and condemn her to the eternity of her curse? It's total nonsense. But of course, You don't understand that, do you? Neither you, Senor Garbati, nor your idiot MeToo followers who just see a woman with a sword and don't realise how much of a travesty this actually is. Why not treat yourself or a favoured relative or friend to these magnificent examples of merch? The mugs and t-shirts come in the Graniopteryx design or Grambo with a firearm or the more deadly knitting needles. Go to www.graniopteryx.com and whatever platform you're watching this on, please click like, subscribe and share.